Olivia's act of kindness saved the child's life, but the letter in her hands threatened to shatter her world. Her heart raced as she realized this unexpected connection could be both a blessing and a curse. The sharp scent of antiseptic hit Olivia Chun's nostrils as she pushed open the heavy doors of the Seattle General Hospital. Her heart raced, each beat a painful reminder of why she was here. 2 years to the day since she had last walked these halls, holding her father's hand as he took his final breaths. Now, at 25, Olivia was back, not as a grieving daughter, but as a first-time blood donor. She tugged at the sleeve of her oversized sweater, a habit she'd developed in the months following her father's passing. The soft wool offered little comfort as she approached the reception desk, her steps hesitant. "I'm here to donate blood," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, smiled warmly. "First time?" she asked, already reaching for a clipboard of forms. Olivia nodded, accepting the paperwork with trembling hands. As she settled into a hard plastic chair to fill out the forms, her gaze drifted to the other people in the waiting area. A young couple sat huddled together, their intertwined fingers and worried expressions speaking volumes. An elderly man flipped through a dog-eared magazine, his weathered face a map of life's journey. She wondered about their stories, what brought them here on this gray Seattle morning. Were they also trying to find meaning in loss? Or were they simply kind souls, extending their humanity through the gift of blood? Olivia's pen hovered over the medical history section. No major illnesses, no medications. She was the picture of health, thanks in large part to her father's insistence on a balanced diet and regular exercise. A lump formed in her throat as she remembered their Sunday morning jogs along the waterfront, the Space Needle looming in the distance like a sentinel guarding their memories. "Miss Chun?" A nurse called her name, jolting Olivia from her reverie. "We're ready for you now." The donation room was smaller than Olivia had imagined, filled with reclining chairs and the soft hum of machinery. As the nurse prepped her arm, Olivia closed her eyes, willing herself to remain calm. The slight pinch of the needle was nothing compared to the emotional turmoil churning inside her. "You're doing great," the nurse reassured her, patting her shoulder gently. "First-time donors are often nervous, but you're handling it like a pro." Olivia managed a weak smile. "I'm doing it for my dad," she found herself saying, surprising even herself with the admission. He passed away from leukemia 2 years ago today." The nurse's eyes softened with understanding. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Your dad would be proud of you for doing this." As her blood flowed into the collection bag, Olivia felt a strange sense of connection to her father. It was as if, through this act, she was keeping a part of him alive. She imagined her blood coursing through someone else's veins, giving them a second chance at life, the chance her father never got. The process was over quicker than she expected. As Olivia sat up, sipping apple juice to ward off any dizziness, she caught sight of a poster on the wall. "Your donation can save up to 3 lives," it proclaimed in bold letters. The magnitude of what she had just done began to sink in. Walking out of the hospital, Olivia felt lighter somehow. The weight of grief that had been her constant companion for 2 years seemed to have shifted, if only slightly. She pulled out her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart but rarely called these days. "Mom?" she said when the line connected. "I did it. I donated blood." Sarah Chun's voice crackled through the speaker, thick with emotion. "Oh, Olivia, your father would be so proud." The conversation was brief, stilted by the emotional distance that had grown between them since the funeral. But it was a start, Olivia thought, a tiny crack in the wall she had built around herself. As she made her way home to her small apartment in Capitol Hill, Olivia's mind wandered to her latest graphic design project. She had been struggling with it for days, unable to find the right color palette for a local coffee shop's rebranding. Now, inspired by her morning's experience, she had a flash of inspiration. Rich, life-giving reds balanced with soothing blues, colors of vitality and calm. Olivia spent the rest of the day lost in her work, emerging from her creative trance only when the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the Seattle skyline. She stretched, her muscles protesting the long hours hunched over her tablet. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had skipped lunch in her creative fervor. As she heated up leftover Chinese takeout, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Zoe. "Hey, stranger, drinks tonight? The gang misses you." Olivia stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. It had been months since she'd gone out with her friends, always finding excuses to stay in. The thought of forced small talk and pitying glances was usually enough to keep her home. But tonight, riding the high of her morning's accomplishment, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a desire for a connection. Sure, she typed back before she could change her mind. "Meet you at the Nest in an hour?" An hour later, Olivia found herself perched on a bar stool at the Nest, a trendy rooftop bar with a stunning view of the Seattle skyline. She nursed a gin and tonic, the tart lime a sharp contrast to the sweetness of reunion with her friends. "I can't believe you actually came out," Zoe exclaimed, pulling Olivia into a tight hug. "We were starting to think you turned into a hermit." Olivia managed a small laugh. "Just been busy with work," she deflected, not quite ready to share the real reason for her emergence from isolation. As the night wore on, Olivia found herself relaxing, drawn into conversations about new restaurants, office gossip, and the latest binge-worthy shows. It felt normal, a glimpse of the life she used to have before grief became her constant companion. But as her friends chatted animatedly about future plans, weddings, career moves, travel adventures, Olivia felt a familiar ache in her chest. Her own future had seemed to grind to a halt the day her father died, leaving her adrift in a sea of uncertainty. "Earth to Olivia," Zoe's voice cut through her thoughts. "You okay?" You zoned out for a minute there. Olivia forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired. I should probably head home." As she said her goodbyes and stepped out into the cool night air, Olivia felt the weight of her grief settling back onto her shoulders. The brief respite of normalcy only served to highlight how far she still had to go. Walking home, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, Olivia made a silent promise to herself. She would donate blood again in 3 months, the minimum waiting period between donations. It wasn't much, but it was something tangible, a way to honor her father's memory and perhaps find a sense of purpose again. Little did she know that this simple decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. 3 months passed in a blur of deadlines, sleepless nights, and half-hearted attempts at socializing. Olivia threw herself into her work, taking on more freelance projects than ever before. Her tiny apartment became a fortress of solitude, cluttered with sketchbooks and empty coffee mugs. On the morning of her second blood donation, Olivia woke before her alarm, a nervous energy thrumming through her veins. She dressed carefully, choosing a soft, emerald green sweater that her father had always said brought out the warmth in her eyes. The hospital seemed less intimidating this time, the antiseptic smell almost comforting in its familiarity. As she settled into the donation chair, Olivia closed her eyes, allowing herself to remember her father's warm smile, the sound of his laughter. "All done, sweetheart." The nurse's voice broke through her reverie. "You did great." Olivia opened her eyes, surprised to find them damp with unshed tears. She blinked rapidly, offering a wobbly smile to the nurse as she pressed a bandage to the crook of her arm. "Thank you," Olivia said softly, meaning it for more than just a professional care. As she left the hospital, Olivia felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. 2 donations, 6 potential lives impacted. She wondered briefly about the people who might receive her blood. Would they feel different, knowing a stranger's gift was coursing through their veins? The weeks that followed brought a subtle shift in Olivia's world. Colors seemed brighter, food tasted better. She found herself smiling at small things. A dog chasing a frisbee in the park, the perfect swirl of foam on her latte. It was as if the act of giving had awakened something within her, a reminder that she was still alive, still capable of making a difference. But fate had more in store for Olivia Chun than she could have ever imagined. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 months after her second donation, a letter arrived that would shatter her carefully reconstructed world and force her to confront the very fears she had been running from. The envelope was unremarkable. a standard white rectangle with her name and address printed in neat block letters. But as Olivia tore it open, her hands shaking slightly, she knew instinctively that its contents would change everything. Olivia's fingers trembled as she unfolded the letter, her heart racing with an inexplicable mix of anticipation and dread. The Seattle skyline, visible through her apartment window, seemed to fade into the background as she focused on the words before her. "Dear Olivia Chun," the letter began. "My name is Emily Rodriguez, and I'm 8 years old. The doctors told me that your blood saved my life, and I wanted to say thank you." Olivia sank onto her couch, the letter clutched tightly in her hands. Emily went on to describe her battle with a rare blood disorder, how she had been close to giving up hope when Olivia's donation arrived. The girl's words were simple but powerful, filled with a gratitude that threatened to overwhelm Olivia. "I know donors are supposed to be anonymous," Emily wrote, "but I really want to meet you. You're my hero." The letter ended with a phone number and an invitation to visit Emily at Seattle Children's Hospital. Olivia stared at the paper long after she'd finished reading, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She thought of her father, of the countless transfusions he'd received during his battle with leukemia. Had he ever wanted to thank his anonymous donors? Had they ever known the impact they'd had? A soft knock at her door startled Olivia from her reverie. She opened it to find her mother, Sarah Chun, standing in the hallway, a bag of groceries in her arms. "I thought I'd make us dinner," Sarah said, her smile tentative. "It's been a while since we've had a meal together." Olivia stepped back, allowing her mother to enter. Their relationship had been strained since her father's death, both women lost in their own grief, unable to bridge the chasm between them. But lately, there had been small overtures from both sides. A text here, a brief phone call there. As Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, Olivia found herself studying her mother. At 55, Sarah was still beautiful, her long black hair now streaked with elegant strands of silver. She moved with the grace of a dancer, a remnant of her years performing with a prestigious ballet company in China before immigrating to the United States. "I got a letter today," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper, "from someone who received my blood donation." Sarah's hands stilled over the vegetables she was chopping. She turned to face her daughter, her eyes wide with surprise and a hint of concern. "Oh, Olivia, what did it say?" As Olivia recounted the contents of Emily's letter, she watched a myriad of emotions play across her mother's face. Pride, sadness, and something that looked almost like hope. "Your father would be so proud of you," Sarah said softly, reaching out to squeeze Olivia's hand. "You've given this child a second chance of life." The mention of her father sent a familiar pang through Olivia's heart. But for once, it wasn't accompanied by the usual wave of despair. Instead, she felt a spark of something else. Purpose, perhaps, or the faintest glimmer of healing. As they sat down to dinner, a fragrant stir-fry that reminded Olivia of countless family meals from her childhood. The conversation flowed more easily than it had in years. Sarah shared stories of her latest dance students, her eyes lighting up as she described a particularly gifted young ballerina. Olivia found herself opening up about her graphic design projects, even showing her mother some of her recent work on her tablet. "You've always had your father's eye for color," Sarah mused, swiping through Olivia's designs. "He would love these." The mention of her father no longer felt like a knife to the heart. Instead, it was a warm reminder of the man who had shaped so much of who Olivia was today. As Sarah prepared to leave, she paused at the door, turning to face her daughter. "Olivia, about the letter, what are you going to do?" Olivia bit her lip, the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. "I don't know, Mom. Part of me wants to meet Emily, to see for myself the difference I've made. But another part is scared." Sarah finished for her. "Scared of forming a connection, of caring too much." Olivia nodded, surprised and grateful for her mother's insight. Sarah cupped her daughter's face gently. "Your heart has always been your greatest strength, Olivia. Don't let fear keep you from using it." With those words lingering in the air, Sarah left, leaving Olivia to ponder her next move. The following day, Olivia found herself distracted at work, her mind constantly drifting back to Emily's letter. She was in the middle of a Zoom call with a client when her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Zoe. "Lunch at the new Thai place?" I've got gossip. Olivia smiled, grateful for the distraction. An hour later, she was seated across from Zoe at a cozy booth, the air fragrant with lemongrass and ginger. Zoe launched into a story about her latest Tinder disaster, her animated gestures nearly knocking over her iced tea. Olivia listened, laughing at all the right moments, but her mind was elsewhere. "Okay, spill," Zoe said suddenly, fixing Olivia with a knowing look. "You've got that far-away look in your eyes. What's going on?" Olivia hesitated for a moment before telling Zoe about the letter from Emily. As she spoke, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the simple act of sharing her dilemma bringing a sense of relief. Zoe listened intently, her usual exuberance tempered by the seriousness of the topic. When Olivia finished, Zoe reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. "Liv, this is huge," she said softly. "I know you're scared, but think about what this could mean, not just for Emily, but for you too." Olivia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I know. It's just, after Dad, I swore I wouldn't let myself get close to anyone who might." She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Who might leave you," Zoe finished gently. "But Liv, isn't that what living is all about? Taking risks, forming connections, even if we know they might not last forever." As they finished their meal, Olivia felt a sense of clarity beginning to form. She wasn't ready to make a decision yet, but the fog of indecision was starting to lift. Back in her apartment, Olivia found herself drawn to the box of her father's belongings that she had stashed in the back of her closet after his death. With trembling hands, she opened it, the scent of her father's cologne wafting up to greet her. Among the collection of photos, books, and mementos, Olivia found her father's journal. She had never been able to bring herself to read it before, but now she felt compelled to open it. Her father's familiar handwriting filled the pages, detailing his thoughts and feelings throughout his illness. As Olivia read, tears streaming down her face, she came across an entry that made her heart skip a beat. "Another transfusion today. I find myself wondering about the person whose blood is now flowing through my veins. Who are they? What dreams do they have? I wish I could thank them. Tell them how their gift has given me more time with my beloved Olivia and Sarah. If only they knew the ripple effect of their generosity." Olivia closed the journal, her father's words echoing in her mind. She thought of Emily, of the life stretching out before her, thanks to a simple act of kindness. She thought of her own grief, of the walls she had built around her heart. With a deep breath, Olivia reached for her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keypad for a moment before she steeled herself and dialed the number from Emily's letter. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered. "Hi," Olivia said, her voice shaking slightly. "My name is Olivia Chun. I received a letter from Emily Rodriguez. I'm the person who donated blood for her." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh my God," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "We've been hoping you'd call. I'm Maria, Emily's mother. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you've done for our family." As Olivia listened to Maria's heartfelt words of gratitude, she felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but alongside it was a growing sense of purpose, of connection. "I'd like to meet Emily," Olivia found herself saying, "if that's okay with you and her doctors." The joy in Maria's voice was palpable as they made arrangements for Olivia to visit the hospital the following week. As she hung up the phone, Olivia felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. She was stepping into unknown territory, opening herself up to a connection that could bring joy or heartbreak. But as she looked at her father's journal, still open on her lap, Olivia knew she was making the right choice. She was honoring her father's memory, not by shutting herself away, but by embracing the very thing he had valued most, the power of human connection. With a deep breath, Olivia picked up her sketchpad and began to draw. Colors flowed from her pencils, warm reds, vibrant yellows, soothing blues. As the image took shape, Olivia realized she was drawing a sunrise, full of hope and the promise of a new beginning. The week leading up to Olivia's hospital visit passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. She threw herself into her work, taking on extra projects to keep her mind occupied. But no matter how busy she kept herself, Thoughts of Emily and their impending meeting were never far from her mind. On the morning of the visit, Olivia stood before her closet, deliberating over what to wear. She wanted to look approachable, friendly, someone an 8-year-old girl would feel comfortable talking to. Finally, she settled on a soft, yellow sweater and jeans, her father's favorite watch on her wrist for good luck. The drive to Seattle Children's Hospital felt both interminable and far too short. Olivia's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white with tension. As she pulled into the parking lot, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, her father's encouraging voice echoing in her mind. The pediatric ward was a riot of color, its walls adorned with cheerful murals of animals and fairy tale characters. Olivia approached the nurse's station, her steps hesitant. "I'm here to see Emily Rodriguez," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The nurse's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, you must be Olivia. We've all been so excited to meet you." Emily hasn't stopped talking about your visit. As the nurse led her down the corridor, Olivia's anxiety began to mingle with a strange sense of anticipation. She was about to meet someone whose life she had saved. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. They stopped outside a door decorated with colorful drawings and a sign that read Emily's room in glittery letters. The nurse knocked gently before pushing the door open. "Emily, honey, you have a visitor," she announced. Olivia stepped into the room, her eyes immediately drawn to the small figure sitting up in the hospital bed. Emily Rodriguez was tiny for her age, her skin pale against the white hospital sheets. But her eyes, large, dark, and expressive, were full of life and curiosity. "Are you Olivia?" Emily asked, her voice filled with wonder. Olivia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She moved closer to the bed, taking in the tubes and monitors surrounding Emily. Despite the clinical setting, Emily's space was filled with personal touches. Stuffed animals, books, and drawings covered every available surface. "You're prettier than I imagined," Emily said matter-of-factly, causing Olivia to let out a surprised laugh. "And you're braver than I can ever be," Olivia replied, finding her voice at last. A woman who had been sitting quietly in the corner stood up, moving towards Olivia with tears in her eyes. "I'm Maria, Emily's mother," she said, pulling Olivia into a tight hug. "Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, for everything." The intensity of Maria's gratitude threatened to overwhelm Olivia, but she forced herself to remain composed. This wasn't about her discomfort. It was about Emily and her family. As Maria released her, Olivia turned back to Emily, who was watching the interaction with keen interest. "I brought you something," Olivia said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a sketchbook and a set of high-quality colored pencils. "I heard you like to draw." Emily's face lit up, her smile brighter than Olivia could have imagined. "I love drawing, but the hospital pencils are always broken." As Emily eagerly flipped through the sketchbook, Olivia found herself relaxing. She perched on the edge of the bed, and soon they were deep in conversation about favorite colors, animals, and the best flavors of hospital jello. Time seemed to fly by as Olivia and Emily chatted. Olivia found herself drawn in by Emily's infectious enthusiasm and quick wit. Despite her illness, Emily radiated a joy for life that was both humbling and inspiring. As their visit drew to a close, Emily suddenly grew serious. "Olivia," she said, her voice small but determined, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Olivia replied, leaning in closer. "Will you come back and visit me again? I know you're probably really busy and important, but..." Emily trailed off, looking down at her hands. Olivia felt her heart constrict. She thought of all the reasons she should say no: her busy schedule, the emotional toll, the fear of getting too attached. But looking at Emily's hopeful face, she found she couldn't refuse. "I'd love to," Olivia said softly. "How about next week?" Emily's face lit up with joy, and she threw her arms around Olivia in an impulsive hug. Olivia stiffened for a moment, surprised by the sudden contact, before relaxing into the embrace. As Olivia left the hospital, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The visit had been both easier and harder than she'd anticipated. Emily's resilience and spirit were awe-inspiring, but seeing her in that hospital bed, so small and vulnerable, had stirred up painful memories of her father's illness. Olivia was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice Dr. Marcus Thompson waiting by her car. The tall, African-American doctor had been her father's oncologist, and seeing him brought a fresh wave of emotion. "Olivia," Dr. Thompson said warmly, "I heard you were here today. I hope you don't mind me waiting to catch you." Olivia shook her head, managing a small smile. "It's good to see you, Dr. Thompson." The doctor's kind eyes studied her face. "How are you doing, really? I know this couldn't have been easy for you." Olivia took a deep breath, considering her answer. "It was intense," she admitted. "Emily is amazing, but being back in a hospital, seeing her hooked up to all those machines, it brought back a lot of memories." Dr. Thompson nodded understandingly. "That's natural. But Olivia, what you're doing, it's incredible. Emily's case is complex, but your blood donation has given her a fighting chance." As Dr. Thompson explained the intricacies of Emily's condition and treatment plan, Olivia found herself hanging on every word. The medical jargon was largely beyond her comprehension, but one thing was clear: Emily's fight was far from over. "We're cautiously optimistic," Dr. Thompson concluded, "but Emily will need ongoing support. Your visit seemed to have given her a real boost." Olivia nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "I told her I'd come back next week," she said softly. Dr. Thompson smiled. "That's wonderful. But Olivia, remember to take care of yourself too. It's okay to set boundaries." As Olivia drove home, her conversation with Dr. Thompson replayed in her mind. She had committed to visiting Emily again, but was she ready for the emotional journey ahead? Could she open her heart to this brave little girl, knowing the pain that could come with caring so deeply? Lost in thought, Olivia almost missed the call coming through her car's Bluetooth system. It was her mother. "Olivia, how did it go?" Sarah's voice was filled with concern and curiosity. As Olivia recounted her visit with Emily, she found herself choking up. "Mom, she's so small, but so full of life. And her mom? The way she looked at me, like I was some kind of hero." "You are a hero, sweetheart," Sarah said softly. "What you've done for that family, it's extraordinary." Olivia shook her head, even though her mother couldn't see her. "I'm not a hero, Mom. I just donated blood. The doctors, the nurses, they're the real heroes." "Olivia Chun." Sarah's voice took on a stern tone that Olivia hadn't heard since her teenage years. "Don't you dare diminish what you've done. Your father always said that true heroism lies in small acts of kindness. You've given that little girl hope." As she ended the call with her mother, Olivia felt a strange mix of emotions churning inside her. Pride at what she'd done, fear of the journey ahead, and an overwhelming sense of connection that she hadn't felt since her father's death. Arriving home, Olivia found herself drawn to her easel. She picked up a brush, dipping it in paint without conscious thought. As she worked, images flowed from her mind to the canvas. Emily's bright eyes, the colorful murals in the hospital hallway, the sunrise she had sketched the week before. Hours passed unnoticed as Olivia painted, pouring her conflicting emotions into her art. When she finally stepped back, the canvas was filled with a scene that took her breath away. It showed two figures, one small and one tall, standing at the edge of a vibrant sunrise. Their faces were turned away, looking towards the new day, but their hands were clasped tightly together. Olivia stared at the painting, her heart racing. Without fully realizing it, she had captured her new reality, a journey into unknown territory, filled with both hope and fear, but one she wouldn't have to face alone. As the last rays of sunlight faded from her apartment, Olivia made a decision. She would continue to visit Emily, to be there for her through her treatment. It would be challenging, emotionally draining, and potentially heartbreaking. But it would also be an opportunity to honor her father's memory, to make a real difference in someone's life. With a deep breath, Olivia picked up her phone and typed out a text to Zoe. "I met Emily today. It changed everything. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I have a lot to talk about." As she hit send, Olivia felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in 2 years, she was looking forward to the future, ready to embrace whatever it might bring. The next morning, Olivia found herself seated across from Zoe at their favorite coffee shop. a steaming latte warming her hands. The bustling atmosphere of the cafe felt surreal after the emotional intensity of the previous day. "Okay, spill," Zoe said, leaning forward eagerly. "I want every detail about your visit with Emily." Olivia took a deep breath, then began recounting her experience. As she spoke, she found herself reliving every moment, the nervous anticipation, the shock of seeing Emily so small and vulnerable, the unexpected joy of their connection. Zoe listened intently, her expressive face mirroring Olivia's emotions. When Olivia finished, Zoe reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Liv, wow. I'm so proud of you for going through with it," Zoe said, her eyes shining. "How are you feeling now?" Olivia paused, considering the question. "Overwhelmed," she admitted. "Scared, but also alive. It's like I've been sleepwalking for the past 2 years, and suddenly I'm wide awake." Zoe nodded understandingly. "It's a big change. Are you going to keep visiting her?" "I told her I would," Olivia said, a hint of anxiety creeping into her voice. "But Zoe, what if something happens to her? I don't know if I can handle losing someone else." Zoe's gaze softened. "Oh, Liv, I get it. I really do. But think about it this way. Isn't the possibility of bringing joy to Emily's life worth the risk?" As they continued to talk, dissecting every aspect of the visit and its implications, Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Zoe's unwavering support and practical advice helped to quell some of her fears and reinforce her decision to continue visiting Emily. Later that day, Olivia found herself facing another challenge, telling her boss about her commitment to visit Emily regularly. She had always been a dedicated employee, rarely taking time off, and she worried about how this change would be perceived. To her surprise, her boss, Janet, was incredibly supportive. "Olivia, what you're doing is wonderful," Janet said, her usually stern expression softening. "We can definitely work around your hospital visits. In fact, why don't you consider doing some of your work remotely on those days?" Olivia left the meeting feeling buoyed by Janet's understanding. It seemed that opening up about Emily was having unexpected positive effects on various aspects of her life. As the week progressed, Olivia found herself thinking constantly about Emily. She caught herself smiling at small reminders. A yellow balloon floating by, Emily's favorite color. A little girl's laugh in the supermarket. The smell of antiseptic that now brought a mix of anxiety and anticipation rather than just painful memories. She also found herself paying more attention to the news about healthcare and medical research. Stories about breakthrough treatments or funding cuts to hospitals that she might have skimmed over before now held her rapt attention. Olivia began to realize just how much Emily's situation was changing her perspective on the world. The night before her second visit to the hospital, Olivia couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of Emily. What if Emily was having a bad day? What if the doctors had bad news? What if Emily decided she didn't want to see Olivia anymore? In the early hours of the morning, Olivia gave up on sleep and went to her easel. She began to paint, letting her anxieties flow through her brush onto the canvas. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over her apartment, Olivia stepped back to look at what she had created. The painting was a swirl of emotions, dark, turbulent colors interspersed with bright bursts of yellow and white. It wasn't her usual style, but looking at it, Olivia felt a sense of catharsis. She had managed to externalize her inner turmoil, and in doing so, had found a measure of peace. Energized by her night of creative outpouring, Olivia prepared for her hospital visit with a sense of purpose. She packed her bag carefully, new colored pencils for Emily, a novel she thought Maria might enjoy, and her sketch pad, just in case. As she walked through the hospital corridors, Olivia was struck by how different it felt from her first visit. The cheerful murals and bustling activity no longer seemed at odds with the serious nature of the place. Instead, she saw it as a place of hope, of small victories and daily acts of courage. When she entered Emily's room, she was greeted by a sight that made her heart soar. Emily was sitting up in bed, her face lighting up as she saw Olivia. She was wearing a bright yellow headscarf that matched Olivia's sweater from their first meeting. "Olivia, you came back," Emily exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "Of course I did," Olivia replied, moving to sit beside the bed. "I promised, didn't I?" As they fell into easy conversation, Olivia marveled at how natural it felt. They talked about Emily's latest art projects, the book she was reading, and her dreams of becoming a marine biologist. Olivia found herself sharing stories about her own childhood, her work as a graphic designer, and even, to her surprise, memories of her father. "Your dad sounds really cool," Emily said, her eyes wide with interest. "Do you think he would have liked me?" The question caught Olivia off guard, bringing a lump to her throat. "He would have adored you," she said softly, realizing as she spoke that it was absolutely true. As their visit drew to a close, Olivia noticed that Emily seemed more subdued. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Emily bit her lip, looking down at her hands. "I have a big test tomorrow," she said quietly. "The doctors say it will show if the treatment is working." "I'm scared." Olivia felt her heart clench. She wanted to reassure Emily, to promise her that everything would be fine, but she knew better than to make promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she reached out and took Emily's hand. "It's okay to be scared," Olivia said. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you face your fears anyway." Emily looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Will you think about me tomorrow? During the test? I'll do you one better," Olivia said, an idea forming. "What time is your test?" 10 o'clock, Emily replied. Olivia squeezed her hand. "Then at 10 o'clock tomorrow, I'll stop whatever I'm doing and draw something just for you. And next time I visit, I'll bring it to you. That way, you'll know I'm thinking about you, even when I'm not here." Emily's face lit up with a smile that could have outshone the sun. "Promise?" "I promise," Olivia said, sealing the deal with a pinky swear. As Olivia left the hospital, she felt a complex mix of emotions. The joy of connecting with Emily was tempered by the weight of the little girl's fears. She found herself wishing she could do more, could somehow guarantee a positive outcome for Emily's test. Lost in thought, Olivia almost bumped into Dr. Thompson in the parking lot. The doctor steadied her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Olivia, I'm glad I caught you," he said, his face serious. "I wanted to talk to you about Emily's condition." Olivia felt her heart rate spike. "Is everything okay?" Dr. Thompson sighed. "Emily's case is complex. Tomorrow's test is crucial. It will show us if the current treatment plan is working. I know you've grown close to Emily, and I think it's important for you to understand the gravity of her situation." As Dr. Thompson explained the intricacies of Emily's condition and the potential outcomes of the test, Olivia felt her world narrowing to a pinpoint. The reality of Emily's illness, which had been somewhat abstract before, suddenly became painfully clear. "What can I do?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Thompson's expression softened. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Your visits mean the world to Emily. They give her something to look forward to, a reason to keep fighting. But Olivia, I need you to prepare yourself. This journey may not have the outcome we all hope for." As Olivia drove home, her conversation with Dr. Thompson replayed in her mind. She had known, intellectually, that Emily's condition was serious. But hearing the details, understanding the precariousness of the little girl's situation, brought a new level of emotional intensity to her commitment. Arriving home, Olivia found herself drawn once again to her easel. But this time, instead of painting, she began to sketch. As the clock ticked towards 10, she lost herself in the act of creation, pouring all her hopes and fears for Emily into the drawing. At precisely 10 o'clock, Olivia put the finishing touches on her sketch. She looked down at what she had created, a vibrant underwater scene, full of colorful fish and coral, with a smiling mermaid who bore a striking resemblance to Emily swimming through the center. As she sat back, exhausted but satisfied, Olivia realized that her relationship with Emily had irrevocably changed her life. She was no longer just a blood donor or a casual visitor. She had become a part of Emily's support system, a source of hope and joy in the face of unimaginable challenges. With that realization came a sense of both terror and exhilaration. Olivia knew that the path ahead would be difficult, filled with ups and downs, joy and heartbreak. But for the first time since her father's death, she felt truly alive. truly connected to something greater than herself. As she prepared for bed, Olivia sent a quick text to her mother. Made another hospital visit today. It's hard, but it feels right. Can we have dinner this week? I'd like to talk. Single quotes. Then, closing her eyes, Olivia sent a silent wish into the universe for Emily's test results, hoping against hope that somewhere, somehow, her father was watching over them both. The day after Emily's crucial test, Olivia found herself unable to focus on her work. Her eyes kept darting to her phone, hoping for news from Maria or Dr. Thompson. The silence was deafening, and her imagination ran wild with possibilities, both good and bad. Around noon, her phone finally buzzed with a text from Maria. Test results inconclusive. Doctors want to run more tests. Emily asking for you. Olivia's heart sank. Inconclusive wasn't bad, but it wasn't the clear positive result they had all been hoping for. She quickly replied, promising to visit as soon as possible. That evening, Olivia found herself once again walking the now familiar corridors of Seattle Children's Hospital. The cheerful murals seemed at odds with the heaviness in her heart. As she approached Emily's room, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever she might find. Emily was sitting up in bed, looking smaller and paler than Olivia remembered. But her face lit up when she saw Olivia, a smile breaking through the worry etched on her young features. You came, Emily said softly, reaching out for Olivia's hand. Olivia took it, squeezing gently. Of course I did. I brought you something. She pulled out the underwater sketch she had created during Emily's test. Emily's eyes widened as she took in the drawing. It's beautiful, she whispered, her fingers tracing the outline of the mermaid. Is that me? Olivia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. I drew it yesterday at 10 o'clock, just like I promised. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. I was so scared during the test, she admitted, but I kept thinking about you drawing and it helped. As they talked, Olivia noticed Maria watching them from the corner of the room, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and worry. Olivia made a mental note to speak with her later, to offer whatever support she could. The visit was shorter than usual, as Emily tired quickly. As Olivia was preparing to leave, Emily grabbed her hand. Will you be here for my next test? She asked, her voice small and frightened. Olivia felt her heart breaking. When is it? Next week, Emily replied. The doctors want to do it as soon as possible. Olivia glanced at her mental calendar, realizing with a sinking feeling that she had an important client meeting scheduled for the same day. But looking at Emily's hopeful face, she knew there was only one answer she could give. I'll be here, she promised, sealing it with their now customary pinky swear. As Olivia left the hospital, she was intercepted by Dr. Thompson. The doctor's face was grave as he pulled her aside to talk. Olivia, I wanted to update you on Emily's condition, he said, his voice low. The inconclusive results are concerning. If the next round of tests doesn't show improvement, we may need to consider more aggressive treatment options. Olivia felt her stomach drop. More aggressive? What does that mean? Dr. Thompson sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. It could mean stronger chemotherapy, possibly even a bone marrow transplant. I know you care deeply for Emily, but I need you to understand, things might get much harder before they get better. As Olivia drove home, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The weight of Emily's situation pressed heavily on her heart. She found herself wondering if she was in over her head, if she was equipped to handle the emotional toll of what lay ahead. The next few days passed in a blur of work and worry. Olivia threw herself into her projects, trying to get ahead so she could take time off for Emily's next test. But her mind constantly drifted to the hospital, to the brave little girl fighting for her life. On Wednesday evening, Olivia met her mother for dinner at their favorite Chinese restaurant. As they settled into their booth, the familiar aromas of ginger and soy sauce wafting around them, Sarah studied her daughter's face with concern. You look tired, sweetheart, she said gently. How are you holding up? Olivia sighed, feeling the exhaustion deep in her bones. It's hard, Mom, she admitted. Seeing Emily so sick, knowing what she's going through, it brings back so many memories of Dad. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Olivia's hand. I know, honey, but what you're doing for that little girl, it's incredible. Your father would be so proud of you. As they talked, Olivia found herself opening up more than she had in years. She shared her fears about Emily's prognosis, her struggle to balance her emotional involvement with her work responsibilities, and her lingering grief over her father's death. Sarah listened attentively, offering comfort and advice in equal measure. As the evening wore on, Olivia felt a warmth spreading through her chest, the feeling of reconnecting with her mother, of rebuilding a relationship that had been strained by shared grief. "Mom," Olivia said as they were preparing to leave, Would you like to come with me to visit Emily sometime? I think you'd really like her. Single quotes. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'd love that, sweetheart. Thank you for letting me be a part of this." The day of Emily's next test arrived all too quickly. Olivia had managed to reschedule her client meeting, but the stress of juggling her work commitments with her promise to Emily was taking its toll. She arrived at the hospital feeling drained but determined to be strong for Emily. Emily was already prepped for the test when Olivia arrived, looking tiny and vulnerable in her hospital gown. Maria sat beside her, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "You came," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Olivia moved to her bedside, taking her hand. "Of course I did. I promised. Remember?" As they waited for the doctors, Olivia tried to keep Emily's spirits up, telling her funny stories about her latest graphic design projects and the antics of her neighbor's mischievous cat. Emily laughed weakly, but Olivia could see the fear lurking in her eyes. When it was time for Emily to go for her test, Olivia felt a moment of panic. What if this was the last time she saw Emily smile? What if the test results were bad? As if sensing her thoughts, Emily squeezed her hand. "Will you draw for me again?" she asked. Olivia nodded, forcing a smile. "Absolutely. What would you like me to draw?" Emily thought for a moment. "A brave princess," she said finally. "Like me." Olivia felt her heart swell with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You got it, kiddo. One brave princess coming up." As Emily was wheeled away, Olivia found herself alone in the hospital room with Maria. The two women looked at each other, a world of unspoken emotions passing between them. "Thank you," Maria said softly, her voice choked with tears. "For being here, for everything you've done for Emily. I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you." Olivia felt her own eyes filling with tears. "Emily is the brave one," she said. "I'm just lucky to know her." The hours of waiting were excruciating. Olivia alternated between pacing the room and sitting still, trying to focus on her sketch of Emily as a brave princess. She poured all her hopes and fears into the drawing, creating a figure that was both regal and unmistakably Emily, with her bright eyes and determined smile. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Emily was brought back to the room. She looked pale and tired, but managed a small smile when she saw Olivia. "How did it go, sweetheart?" Maria asked, rushing to her daughter's side. Emily shrugged weakly. "Okay, I guess. Can I see the drawing, Olivia?" Olivia presented her sketch with a flourish, her heart lightening at the way Emily's face lit up. For a moment, the fear and uncertainty of the day faded, replaced by the simple joy of a child delighting in a gift. As Olivia prepared to leave, promising to return as soon as they had news about the test results, she was struck by the intensity of her emotions. The fear of losing Emily was almost overwhelming, but so was the love she felt for this brave little girl who had unexpectedly become such an important part of her life. Walking out of the hospital, Olivia felt as though she was at a crossroads. She could pull back, protect her heart from the potential pain ahead, or she could lean in, fully committing to being there for Emily, whatever the future might hold. As she got into her car, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "How did it go today? Want to grab a drink and talk?" Olivia smiled, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. She typed out a quick reply. "It was tough, but I'm hanging in there. Drink sounds perfect. Meet you at our usual spot in 30? As she drove towards the bar, Olivia realized that she had already made her decision. There was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead, joy or heartbreak, victory or loss, she was all in. For Emily, for herself, and for the memory of her father, she would see this journey through to the end. Olivia arrived at the bar, a cozy spot called the Inkwell, that she and Zoe had frequented since college. The familiar smell of hops and the low hum of conversation washed over her as she stepped inside, spotting Zoe at their usual corner booth. "Hey, stranger," Zoe said, pulling Olivia into a tight hug. "How are you holding up?" Olivia sank into the booth, gratefully accepting the glass of wine Zoe pushed towards her. I don't even know," she admitted, taking a long sip. It's been such an emotional roller coaster. As Olivia recounted the events of the day, Zoe listened attentively, her expressive face mirroring Olivia's emotions. When Olivia finished, Zoe reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Liv, what you're doing for Emily is amazing," she said softly, "but I'm worried about you. Are you taking care of yourself in all of this?" Olivia opened her mouth to reassure her friend, then closed it again. The truth was, she hadn't been taking care of herself. Her sleep was erratic, her eating habits had deteriorated, and she'd been neglecting her own artwork in favor of sketches for Emily. Zoe, reading the truth in Olivia's silence, nodded knowingly. "That's what I thought." "Okay, new rule. For every hospital visit, you have to do one thing just for you. Deal?" Olivia managed a small smile. "Deal. Thanks, Zoe. I don't know what I'd do without you." As they continued to talk, their conversation drifted to other topics. Zoe shared news about her recent promotion at the tech startup where she worked, her excitement palpable as she described her new responsibilities. "That's fantastic, Zoe," Olivia exclaimed, genuinely happy for her friend. "We should celebrate properly." "Dinner this weekend?" Zoe's smile faltered slightly. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about something," she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've met someone. It's still new, but I think it could be serious." Olivia felt a pang of something, surprise perhaps, or a touch of envy. She pushed it aside, focusing on her friend's happiness. "Zoe, that's wonderful. Tell me everything." As Zoe gushed about her new relationship with Alex, a software engineer she'd met through work, Olivia found herself experiencing a mix of emotions. She was thrilled for her friend, but there was an undercurrent of sadness too. Zoe's life was moving forward, while Olivia felt stuck in a holding pattern, her world revolving around hospital visits and uncertain test results. Later that night, as Olivia lay in bed unable to sleep, she found herself scrolling through her phone. Without really thinking about it, she opened her dating app, the one she downloaded months ago at Zoe's insistence, but had never really used. As she swiped through profiles, Olivia felt a sense of disconnect. How could she think about dating when Emily was fighting for her life? And yet, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, didn't she deserve a chance at happiness too? The next morning, Olivia woke to a text from her mother. "Breakfast at Maple Leaf Diner? I have news." Intrigued, Olivia met Sarah at the quaint diner they'd frequented since Olivia was a child. As she slid into the booth across from her mother, Olivia was struck by how youthful Sarah looked. There was a sparkle in her eye that Olivia hadn't seen in years. "So, what's this news?" Olivia asked as she doctored her coffee. Sarah took a deep breath, a mixture of excitement and nervousness on her face. "I've been offered a position teaching dance at the community center," she said. "It's just a few classes a week, but I think I'm going to take it." Olivia felt a surge of emotion. Her mother had been a talented dancer in her youth, but had given it up to raise a family. Seeing her reconnect with her passion was both beautiful and bittersweet. "Mom, that's amazing," Olivia said, reaching across the table to squeeze her mother's hand. "Dad would be so proud of you." At the mention of her late husband, Sarah's eyes misted over. "I think so too," she said softly. "I feel like I'm finally waking up after a long sleep." "And Olivia, I have you to thank for." Olivia looked at her mother in surprise. "Me? What did I do?" Sarah smiled, her eyes warm with affection. "Seeing you with Emily, watching you open your heart again, it inspired me. If you could find the courage to connect with someone new, even knowing the risks, then maybe I could too." As they continued their breakfast, talking more openly than they had in years, Olivia felt a shift in their relationship. They were no longer just mother and daughter, but two women supporting each other through grief, growth, and new beginnings. Later that day, Olivia found herself back at the hospital for an impromptu visit. Emily had had a rough night, and Maria had reached out, hoping Olivia's presence might lift a little girl's spirits. As Olivia entered the familiar pediatric ward, she nearly collided with a tall, handsome man in scrubs. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she apologized, steadying herself. The man smiled, his green eyes crinkling at the corners. "No harm done. You're Olivia, right? Emily's friend?" Olivia nodded, surprised to be recognized. "I'm Dr. James Carter," he said, extending his hand. "I'm part of Emily's care team. She talks about you all the time." As they shook hands, Olivia felt an unexpected spark of attraction. Dr. Carter had a warm, genuine presence that put her immediately at ease. "It's nice to meet you, Dr. Carter," she said, hoping her sudden nervousness wasn't apparent. "How is Emily doing today?" Dr. Carter's expression grew serious. "She had a tough night, but she's a fighter. Your visits mean the world to her." You know, they chatted for a few more minutes about Emily's condition and treatment. As Dr. Carter was called away, he turned back to Olivia with a smile. "I hope I'll see you around, Olivia. It's great what you're doing for Emily." As Olivia watched him walk away, she felt a flutter in her stomach that she hadn't experienced in years. She quickly pushed the feeling aside, reminding herself that she was here for Emily, not to develop a crush on a handsome doctor. Entering Emily's room, Olivia found the little girl looking pale and tired, but her face lit up at the sight of her visitor. "Olivia, you came!" Emily exclaimed, her voice weaker than usual, but still filled with joy. Olivia moved to Emily's bedside, taking her small hand. "Of course I did, sweetie. I heard you had a rough night." As they talked, Olivia sharing funny stories and Emily showing off her latest drawings. Maria watched from the corner, her face a mixture of gratitude and worry. When Emily drifted off to sleep, Olivia stepped out into the hallway with Maria. "How are you holding up?" Olivia asked gently. Maria sighed, the exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "It's hard," she admitted. "I feel like I'm barely keeping it together most days. But seeing Emily light up when you're here, it gives me hope." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. "Maria, why don't you take a break? Go home, take a shower, get some real sleep. I can stay with Emily for a few hours." Maria looked torn, glancing back at her sleeping daughter. "I don't know. It's okay," Olivia reassured her. "I'll call you if anything changes. Emily will be fine, and you need to take care of yourself too." Finally, Maria nodded, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Olivia. You're a godsend, you know that?" As Maria left, Olivia settled into the chair by Emily's bed, pulling out her sketch pad. She began to draw, losing herself in the soothing rhythm of pencil on paper. Hours passed, the hospital bustling around her as she kept her quiet vigil. Nurses came and went, checking Emily's vitals and adjusting her medications. Dr. Carter stopped by, his presence bringing that same flutter to Olivia's stomach. As evening approached, Olivia found herself reflecting on the twists and turns her life had taken since that first blood donation. She thought of Zoe's new relationship, her mother's rekindled passion for dance, and her own unexpected connection with Dr. Carter. Life was moving forward for everyone, it seemed. And yet, here in this hospital room, time seemed to stand still. Emily's fate hung in the balance, and with it, a piece of Olivia's heart. Just as Olivia was considering stepping out for a coffee, Emily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Olivia?" she mumbled sleepily. "You're still here?" Olivia smiled, squeezing Emily's hand. "Of course I am, sweetie. I promised I'd be here, didn't I?" Emily's answering smile was weak but radiant. "Will you tell me a story? About when you were little?" As Olivia began to recount a childhood adventure, she felt a profound sense of rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever joys or sorrows the future might bring, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, work deadlines, and stolen moments of normalcy. Olivia had fallen into a routine of sorts, balancing her time between Emily, her job, and her slowly rekindling social life. But beneath the surface, tension simmered as they all awaited the results of Emily's latest round of tests. It was a crisp autumn morning when Olivia's phone rang, Dr. Thompson's name flashing on the screen. Her heart leapt into her throat as she answered. Olivia, Dr. Thompson's voice was grave. We've got Emily's latest results. I think you should come to the hospital. The drive to Seattle Children's Hospital was a blur. Olivia's mind raced with possibilities, each scenario more terrifying than the last. As she hurried through the familiar corridors, she nearly collided with Dr. Carter. "Olivia," he said, his usual warm smile replaced by a look of concern. "Dr. Thompson is waiting for you in the conference room." Olivia nodded, unable to find her voice. Dr. Carter squeezed her arm gently before leading her to the room. Inside, Dr. Thompson sat with Maria, whose eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Olivia's heart sank as she took a seat beside them. "Thank you for coming, Olivia," Dr. Thompson began, his voice somber. "I'm afraid the news isn't good. Emily's latest tests show that the cancer has spread. The current treatment plan isn't working as we'd hoped." Maria let out a choked sob, and Olivia instinctively reached for her hand. What are our options?" Olivia asked, surprising herself with the use of "our." When had Emily's fight become her own? Dr. Thompson sighed heavily. "At this point, our best hope is a bone marrow transplant. It's a risky procedure, but it could give Emily a fighting chance." "Okay," Olivia said, her mind whirling. "So we find a donor, right? How do we do that?" "That's the challenge," Dr. Thompson explained. "Finding a perfect match can be difficult, especially given Emily's mixed heritage. We'll start with family members, but the odds of a sibling match—" "I'm an only child," Maria interjected, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Thompson nodded sympathetically. "We'll need to expand our search to the National Registry, but I want to prepare you both. This process can take time, and time is not on our side." The gravity of the situation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Olivia felt as if she were drowning, the weight of Emily's mortality pressing down on her chest. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice cracking. Dr. Thompson looked at her with a mix of admiration and concern. "Continue being there for Emily. Her spirits have a significant impact on her body's ability to fight. And perhaps consider getting tested yourself. While the chances of a non-family match are slim, every potential donor increases our odds." Olivia nodded, a sense of determination cutting through her fear. "Of course, I'll do whatever it takes." As they left the conference room, Olivia pulled Dr. Thompson aside. "Doctor, be honest with me. What are Emily's chances?" Dr. Thompson's eyes were filled with a mixture of professional detachment and genuine sorrow. "Without a transplant, months, maybe weeks. With a successful transplant, and if her body doesn't reject it, she has a fighting chance. But Olivia, you need to prepare yourself. The road ahead will be incredibly difficult, regardless of the outcome." Olivia felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. "Olivia?" Dr. Carter's voice cut through her panic. He was at her side in an instant, his hand on her arm steadying her. "Let's get you some air." He led her to a small courtyard within the hospital grounds. The crisp autumn air helped clear Olivia's head, but it couldn't ease the ache in her heart. "How do you do it?" she asked Dr. Carter, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do you face this every day?" Dr. Carter was quiet for a moment, his green eyes thoughtful. "It's not easy," he admitted. "But then I see the courage of patients like Emily, the love and dedication of people like you. It reminds me why we fight so hard." Olivia looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. The compassion in his eyes, the gentle strength in his presence. It stirred something in her, a flicker of warmth in the cold reality of the day. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything you're doing for Emily, for being here now." Dr. Carter's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "You're not alone in this, Olivia. Remember that." The moment was interrupted by Olivia's phone buzzing. It was a text from Zoe. "Hey, we still on for dinner tonight? I want you to meet Alex." Reality came crashing back. Olivia had completely forgotten about the dinner plans. The idea of putting on a happy face and meeting Zoe's new partner seemed impossible in light of the day's news. I have to go," Olivia said, pulling her hand away from Dr. Carter's. "Thank you again." As she rushed out of the hospital, Olivia's mind was a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. She needed to call her mother, to update her boss about potentially needing more time off. She needed to research bone marrow donation to figure out how she could help spread the word about Emily's need for a donor. But first, she needed to see Emily. Olivia found herself outside Emily's room, taking a deep breath before entering. Emily was awake, looking small and pale against the white hospital sheets, but her face lit up when she saw Olivia. "You came," Emily exclaimed, her voice weaker than usual, but still filled with joy. Olivia moved to Emily's bedside, taking her small hand. "Of course I did, sweetie. I'll always come when you need me." As they talked, Olivia marveled at Emily's resilience. Despite the gravity of her situation, Emily chatted animatedly about the book she was reading and the art project she wanted to start. "Olivia," Emily said suddenly, her tone turning serious, "the doctors told me I need a new treatment. They said it might make me sicker for a while. I'm scared." Olivia felt her heart breaking. She wanted to promise Emily that everything would be okay, that she would definitely find a donor and get better. But she couldn't bring herself to make promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Instead, she squeezed Emily's hand and said, "It's okay to be scared, Emily. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you face your fears and keep going anyway. And you know what? You're the bravest person I know." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she managed a small smile. "Will you still visit me? Even if I'm really sick?" "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," Olivia promised, sealing it with their customary pinky swear. As Olivia left the hospital that evening, she felt as if she'd aged years in a single day. The weight of Emily's prognosis, the daunting task of finding a donor, the conflicting pull of her other relationships and responsibilities. It all seemed overwhelming. She sat in her car, staring at her phone. She knew she should call Zoe, should explain why she couldn't make dinner. But the thought of saying the words out loud, of making Emily's dire situation real by sharing it, was too much to bear. Instead, she sent a quick text. "So sorry, not feeling well. Rain check?" As she drove home, Olivia's mind raced with plans and possibilities. She would contact everyone she knew, organize bone marrow drives, reach out to her connections in the design world to create awareness campaigns. She would do whatever it took to find a donor for Emily. But beneath her determination, a current of fear ran deep. What if they couldn't find a match in time? What if the transplant didn't work? What if, after opening her heart and letting Emily in, Olivia lost her, just like she'd lost her father? As she entered her apartment, Olivia was struck by how normal everything looked. Her easel stood in the corner, a half-finished painting still on it. Bills and sketches were scattered across her desk. It seemed impossible that her world could have shifted so dramatically while everything else remained unchanged. Olivia moved to her easel, picking up a brush almost unconsciously. As she began to paint, colors flowing onto the canvas in a swirl of emotion. She made a silent promise to herself and to Emily. No matter what happened, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, she would be there. For every test, every treatment, every moment of fear or hope or pain or joy, she would fight for Emily with everything she had. And maybe, just maybe, in fighting for Emily's life, she would find a way to fully embrace her own again. The days following Dr. Thompson's devastating news blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Olivia threw herself into action, determined to do everything in her power to help Emily. She reached out to her network of friends, colleagues, and clients, organizing bone marrow drives and awareness campaigns. Her first call had been to Zoe, finally explaining the situation and why she had missed their dinner. Zoe, true to form, had immediately sprung into action. "I'll talk to the Pyre team at work," Zoe said, her voice filled with determination. "We can use our social media platforms to spread the word about Emily's need for a donor. And Alex works for a tech startup. I bet they'd be willing to host a drive too." Olivia felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Zoe, I don't know what to say. Thank you." "Hey, that's what best friends are for," Zoe replied softly. "And Liv, I'm here for you too, okay? Not just for the practical stuff. If you need to talk, or cry, or just sit in silence, I'm here." Olivia's throat tightened with emotion. "I might take you up on that," she managed to say. Her next call was to her mother, Sarah listened in silence as Olivia explained Emily's condition and the search for a donor. When Olivia finished, Sarah's voice was thick with emotion. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. What can I do to help? Could you get tested?" Olivia asked hesitantly. "I know the chances of a match are slim, but of course," Sarah interrupted. "I'll go first thing tomorrow morning, and I'll reach out to my dance students and their families too. We'll find a match for Emily, Olivia. We have to." As the days passed, Olivia's life fell into a new rhythm. Her mornings were spent at the office, cramming as much work as possible into shortened hours. Afternoons and evenings were divided between hospital visits and organizing donor drives. Dr. Carter had become a constant presence, offering support and guidance as Olivia navigated the complex world of medical fundraising and donor recruitment. His steady presence was a balm to Olivia's frayed nerves, and she found herself looking forward to their brief interactions. One evening, as Olivia was leaving the hospital after a particularly difficult visit, Emily had been in pain, the side effects of her treatment hitting hard. She ran into Dr. Carter in the parking lot. "Rough day?" he asked gently, noting the exhaustion etched on Olivia's face. She nodded, too tired to even attempt a smile. "I just feel so helpless," she admitted. "All these drives, all this effort, and we still haven't found a match." Dr. Carter placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "What you're doing matters, Olivia. Even if we haven't found a match yet, you're giving Emily hope. That's incredibly powerful medicine." Olivia looked up at him, struck by the warmth and sincerity in his green eyes. "How do you do it?" she asked softly. "How do you face this every day and not lose hope?" Dr. Carter was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "It's not easy," he admitted. "But then I see the courage of patients like Emily, the dedication of people like you. It reminds me why we keep fighting, even when the odds seem insurmountable." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow down. Olivia felt a flutter in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the unseasonably mild evening. "James, she began, but was cut off by the shrill ring of her phone. It was Maria, calling about Emily's latest test results. The moment broken, Olivia stepped back. "I have to take this," she said apologetically. Dr. Carter nodded understandingly. "Of course. Take care, Olivia. And remember, you're not alone in this." As Olivia drove home that night, a conversation with Dr. Carter with James replayed in her mind. The connection she felt with him was undeniable, but was it real? Or was it just a product of the intense circumstances they found themselves in? Her musings were interrupted by a text from Zoe. "Hey, stranger, feels like I haven't seen you in forever. Coffee tomorrow? I miss my best friend." Guilt washed over Olivia as she realized how much she had been neglecting her other relationships. She quickly replied, agreeing to meet Zoe the next morning. The following day, as Olivia settled into a cozy booth at their favorite coffee shop, she was struck by how normal everything looked. Baristas called out orders, students hunched over laptops, the world spinning on as if Emily's life wasn't hanging in the balance. Zoe arrived in a whirlwind of energy, pulling Olivia into a tight hug before sliding into the booth across from her. "Okay, spill," she said, her eyes scanning Olivia's face. "How are you really doing?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, broke something open in Olivia. Before she knew it, she was really talking, for the first time since Emily's diagnosis had worsened. She told Zoe about the fear that gripped her every time she entered the hospital, terrified that this visit might be the last. She spoke of the guilt she felt for having a life outside of Emily's illness, for sometimes wanting to escape the weight of it all. And hesitantly, she mentioned Dr. Carter, James, and the confusing mix of emotions he stirred in her. Zoe listened intently, offering comfort and advice in equal measure. When Olivia finally fell silent, emotionally spent, Zoe reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Liv, you're carrying so much," she said softly. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to want things for yourself, even now. You're not betraying Emily by having feelings for Dr. McDreamy." Despite everything, Olivia found herself laughing at the nickname. We're not. Zoe raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Sure. Look, All I'm saying is don't close yourself off to the possibility of happiness. Emily wouldn't want that for you. As Olivia left the coffee shop, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Zoe's unwavering support and practical advice had helped to clear some of the fog that had been clouding her mind. Her newfound clarity was put to the test that afternoon when she arrived at the hospital for her daily visit with Emily. To her surprise, she found Maria in animated conversation with a tall, handsome man she didn't recognize. "Olivia!" Maria exclaimed, waving her over. "Come meet Carlos. He's Emily's father." Olivia felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. In all the months she had known Emily and Maria, Emily's father had never been mentioned. She had assumed he wasn't in the picture. Carlos turned to face her, his resemblance to Emily striking. He had the same warm brown eyes and dimpled smile. "So you're the famous Olivia," he said, extending his hand. "Emily talks about you constantly. Thank you for everything you've done for my daughter." Olivia shook his hand automatically, her mind reeling. It's nice to meet you," she managed to say. "I didn't realize Emily's father was involved." A shadow passed over Carlos's face. "I haven't been, not for a long time," he admitted. "But when Maria called about Emily's condition, I knew I had to be here." As they talked, Olivia learned that Carlos had been living in Mexico for the past few years, struggling with addiction issues. He had been clean for 18 months and was slowly rebuilding his life when he got the call about Emily. "I've already been tested," Carlos explained. "We're waiting on the results to see if I'm a match for the bone marrow donation." Olivia felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Hope that Carlos might be the match they had been desperately searching for. Anger that he had been absent for so long, only to swoop in now. And beneath it all, a gnawing fear that her place in Emily's life might be displaced by the return of her father. As she entered Emily's room, these thoughts swirling in her mind, Olivia was struck by the sight before her. Emily was sitting up in bed, her face brighter than it had been in weeks, animatedly chatting with her father. For a moment, Olivia felt like an intruder, an outsider in this family reunion. But then Emily spotted her, and her face lit up with joy. "Olivia, you're here. Come meet my dad." As Olivia moved to Emily's bedside, Carlos stood up, offering her his chair. "I was just leaving," he said. "Emily, I'll be back tomorrow, okay?" After Carlos left, Emily turned to Olivia, her eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. "Isn't it cool that my dad's here?" she asked, her voice small. Do you think he'll stay this time?" Olivia's heart clenched at the hope and fear in Emily's voice. She chose her words carefully, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. "I don't know, sweetie, but I do know that your dad being here now is a good thing. And no matter what happens, you've got a whole team of people who love you and are fighting for you." As she left the hospital that evening, Olivia's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The sudden appearance of Emily's father had thrown everything into a new light. She found herself questioning her role in Emily's life, her growing feelings for Dr. Carter, the balance between hope and realism in the face of Emily's illness. But as she drove home, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. No matter what happened, no matter how complicated things got, she would be there for Emily, come what may. Olivia was in this fight for the long haul. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Carlos's potential as a bone marrow donor had injected a new sense of hope into Emily's treatment, but it also brought complications to the delicate balance of relationships that had formed around her. Olivia found herself in an unexpected role, acting as a bridge between Maria and Carlos as they navigated co-parenting in the midst of a medical crisis. She could see the strain on Maria's face, the mixture of gratitude and resentment towards the man who had been absent for so long. One afternoon, Olivia arrived at the hospital to find Maria pacing in the hallway outside Emily's room, her face tight with anger. "Maria, what's wrong?" Olivia asked, concern coloring her voice. Maria turned to her, eyes blazing. "Carlos wants to take Emily to Mexico when she's better, to meet his family. Can you believe it? After all these years of absence, he thinks he can just waltz back in and make decisions about her future." Olivia took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I understand why you're upset," But maybe this is a conversation to have later? Right now, the focus needs to be on Emily's treatment and recovery. Maria deflated slightly, the anger leaving her in a rush. You're right, of course. It's just, everything is changing so fast. I don't know how to handle it all. Olivia pulled her into a hug, feeling Maria's shoulders shake with suppressed sobs. You're not alone in this, she murmured, echoing Dr. Carter's words to her. We're all here for you and Emily. As the days passed, Olivia found herself spending more time with Dr. Carter James as she'd started to think of him. Their conversations, once centered solely on Emily's treatment, began to expand, touching on their personal lives, hopes, and fears. One evening, as they walked together in the hospital's small courtyard, James turned to her with a serious expression. Olivia, there's something I need to tell you. Olivia's heart skipped a beat, both anticipation and dread flooding through her. What is it? James took a deep breath. I've been offered a position at a research hospital in Boston. It's an incredible opportunity to work on cutting-edge treatments for pediatric cancers. Olivia felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. Oh, she managed to say, her voice small. That's wonderful. Congratulations. James studied her face intently. I haven't accepted yet, he said softly. I wanted to talk to you first. Their eyes met, and in that moment, all the unspoken feelings between them seemed to crystallize. Olivia found herself taking a step closer to him, drawn by an invisible force. James, she began, but was cut off by the shrill ring of her phone. It was Carlos, calling about Emily's latest test results. The moment shattered, Olivia stepped back, fumbling for her phone. I'm sorry, I have to take this, she said, her voice shaking slightly. James nodded, understanding and disappointment warring in his eyes. Of course, we'll talk later. As Olivia hurried back into the hospital, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The possibility of a future with James warred with her commitment to Emily and the guilt she felt for even considering her own happiness in the midst of such a crisis. She pushed these thoughts aside as she entered Emily's room, forcing a smile onto her face. Emily was sitting up in bed, looking pale but determined, with Carlos by her side. Olivia, Emily exclaimed, her face lighting up. Guess what? The doctors say I'm strong enough to start the transplant process. Olivia's heart leapt with a mixture of hope and fear. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the treatment that could save Emily's life. But it was also incredibly risky, with no guarantee of success. As Carlos explained the procedure and the timeline, Olivia found herself studying Emily's face. Despite the excitement in her voice, Olivia could see the fear lurking in her eyes. When Carlos stepped out to talk to the doctors, Olivia moved to sit on the edge of Emily's bed. How are you really feeling, sweetie? She asked gently. Emily's brave facade crumbled slightly. I'm scared, she admitted in a small voice. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm not strong enough? Olivia's heart clenched at the vulnerability in Emily's voice. She took the little girl's hand in hers, squeezing gently. It's okay to be scared, she said softly. But Emily, you are the strongest person I know, and you're not fighting this alone. You have so many people in your corner. Your mom, your dad, the doctors and nurses, me. We're all here for you. Emily managed a small smile. Will you be here for the transplant? Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Olivia promised, sealing it with their customary pinky swear. As the day of the transplant approached, the tension in the hospital seemed to ratchet up to an almost unbearable level. Olivia found herself torn between supporting Emily and her family, managing her own emotional turmoil, and trying to keep up with her work commitments. The night before the procedure, Olivia stayed late at the hospital, not wanting to leave Emily's side. As she sat by the bed, sketching absently while Emily slept, she was surprised to see Zoe appear in the doorway. Hey, Zoe whispered, careful not to wake Emily. I thought you could use some company. And some real food. She held up a bag that smelled tantalizingly of Olivia's favorite Thai takeout. Olivia felt a rush of gratitude for her friend. They moved to the small waiting area down the hall, where Zoe unpacked the food and listened as Olivia poured out her fears and anxieties about the upcoming procedure. And on top of everything, Olivia concluded, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's James. He's been offered this amazing job in Boston, and I don't know what to do. How can I even think about my own life when Emily is fighting for hers?" Zoe reached out, squeezing Olivia's hand. "Liv, listen to me. You are allowed to have a life outside of this hospital. You are allowed to have feelings, to want things for yourself. That doesn't make you selfish. And it doesn't mean you care any less about Emily." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. But if, no what ifs, Zoe interrupted gently. "Right now, focus on being here for Emily. But promise me you'll talk to James before he makes any decisions about Boston. You deserve a chance at happiness too, Olivia." As dawn broke on the day of the transplant, Olivia found herself standing outside the hospital, taking deep breaths of the crisp morning air. The weight of the day ahead pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. "Olivia?" She turned to see James approaching, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Olivia opened her mouth to assure him that she was fine, but found she couldn't form the words. Instead, to her horror, she burst into tears. James didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as she sobbed against his chest. "It's okay," he murmured, stroking her hair. "Let it out. You've been so strong for everyone else. It's okay to not be okay right now." Single quotes. As her sobs subsided, Olivia pulled back slightly, looking up at James. The compassion and understanding in his eyes undid her. "I'm terrified," she admitted in a whisper. "What if something goes wrong? What if we lose her?" James cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a stray tear. "We can't think like that. Emily needs us to be strong, to believe in her ability to fight. And Olivia, whatever happens, you're not alone in this. I'm here. I'll always be here." The intensity of his gaze, the weight of his words, sent a shiver through Olivia. She found herself leaning in, drawn by an invisible force. Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and desperate, a lifeline in the storm of emotions surrounding them. For a moment, the world faded away, leaving only the two of them connected in their shared hope and fear for Emily. As they broke apart, reality came crashing back. Olivia stepped back, her mind whirling. "James, He shook his head, stopping her words. "We don't have to figure everything out right now," he said gently. "Today is about Emily, but Olivia, we will talk about this, about us. I promise." With a deep breath, Olivia nodded. Together, they turned and walked back into the hospital, ready to face whatever the day might bring. As they approached Emily's room, Olivia steeled herself for the emotional journey ahead. Whatever happened in the coming hours and days, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had been irrevocably changed by the brave little girl fighting for her life, and by the unexpected connections she had formed in this most unlikely of places. With a silent prayer for strength, Olivia stepped into Emily's room, ready to stand by her side as she faced the biggest fight of her young life. The day of Emily's bone marrow transplant dawned with a tense, electric atmosphere in the hospital. Olivia arrived early, her heart racing as she made her way to Emily's room. She found Maria and Carlos already there, their usual tension set aside in the face of their shared concern for their daughter. Emily was awake, her small face a mixture of fear and determination. When she saw Olivia, her eyes lit up. "You came," she said softly. Olivia moved to her bedside, taking her hand. "Of course I did, sweetie. I promised, remember?" As the nurses came to prep Emily for the procedure, Olivia found herself fighting back tears. Emily looked so small, so vulnerable in the large hospital bed. But there was a strength in her eyes that took Olivia's breath away. "Olivia," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm scared." Olivia squeezed her hand gently. "I know, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about? Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you face your fears anyway. And you, Emily Rodriguez, are the bravest person I know." Emily managed a small smile. "Will you draw for me while I'm in there?" "Absolutely," Olivia promised. "What would you like me to draw?" Emily thought for a moment. "Our future," she said finally. "All of us, together and happy." Olivia felt her heart constrict. "You got it, kiddo. One happy future, coming right up." As Emily was wheeled away to the operating room, Olivia found herself in the waiting area with Maria and Carlos. The tension was palpable, each of them lost in their own thoughts and fears. Hours passed in a blur of anxiety and hope. Olivia sketched furiously, pouring all her emotions onto the page. She drew Emily, healthy and strong, surrounded by the people who loved her. Maria and Carlos stood together, their past differences set aside. Zoe was there, her arm linked with Alex's. And in the background, almost as an afterthought, Olivia drew herself, standing next to James. As she put the finishing touches on the sketch, Olivia felt a presence beside her. She looked up to see James, his face etched with concern. "Any news?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. He shook his head. "Not yet, but no news is good news at this stage." "How are you holding up?" Olivia managed a weak smile. "I'm okay, just waiting." James's eyes fell on her sketch. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the paper. Olivia nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious as he studied the drawing. His eyes lingered on the figures of themselves in the background. "Is this how you see our future?" he asked softly. Olivia felt a blush creep up her cheeks. I don't know. Maybe, if that's something you want to." James took her hand, his green eyes intense. "Olivia, But before he could finish, the door burst open and Dr. Thompson strode in, his face unreadable. Everyone jumped to their feet, hearts pounding. "How is she?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Thompson's serious expression melted into a smile. "The transplant was successful. Emily is in recovery now. She's not out of the woods yet, but this is a very positive first step." The room erupted in a mixture of tears, laughter, and hugs. Olivia found herself embraced by Maria, then Carlos, their shared relief palpable. As the initial excitement died down, Dr. Thompson continued, "The next few weeks will be critical. We'll need to monitor Emily closely for any signs of rejection or infection. But she's young, she's strong, and she has an incredible support system. Those are all factors in her favor." The days that followed were a roller coaster of hope and fear. Emily's recovery was slow but steady, each small improvement celebrated like a major victory. Olivia split her time between the hospital, her work, and her slowly rekindling social life, always aware that a single phone call could change everything. 2 weeks after the transplant, Olivia arrived at the hospital to find Emily sitting up in bed, a bright smile on her face. "Olivia, look!" Emily exclaimed, holding up a lock of her hair. "It's growing back." Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes as she moved to Emily's bedside. The sight of that small tuft of hair, a tangible sign of Emily's recovery, filled her with an overwhelming sense of hope. "That's amazing, sweetie," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You'll be rocking a full head of hair in no time." As they chatted, Olivia marveled at the change in Emily. There was a new light in her eyes, a strength that went beyond mere physical recovery. Emily was not just surviving, she was thriving. Later that day, as Olivia was leaving the hospital, she ran into James in the parking lot. The sight of him brought a flutter to her stomach, a reminder of the kiss they had shared and the conversation they had yet to have. "Olivia," he said, a smile lighting up his face. "I was hoping to catch you. Do you have a minute?" She nodded, her heart racing. "Of course." James took a deep breath. "I've made a decision about Boston," he said. "I'm not going." Olivia felt a surge of emotions, relief, joy, and a touch of guilt. "James, I can't ask you to give up such an amazing opportunity." He shook his head, taking her hand. "You're not asking, I'm choosing." "Olivia, these past few months, getting to know you, seeing your strength and compassion, I've fallen in love with you, and I don't want to walk away from what we could have together." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I love you too," she admitted softly. "But James, are you sure? Your career is important," he interrupted gently, "but not as important as this, as us. Besides," he added with a grin, "I've been offered a research position here. It's not Boston, but it's a chance to make a difference, to help kids like Emily, and to do it with you by my side, if you'll have me." Olivia's answer came in the form of a kiss, pouring all her love and hope for the future into the connection between them. In the months that followed, life settled into a new normal. Emily continued to recover, growing stronger every day. Maria and Carlos found a way to co-parent peacefully, their shared experience bringing them closer together. Olivia's relationship with James blossomed, their shared passion for helping others strengthening their bond. 1 year to the day after Emily's transplant, they all gathered in the hospital courtyard for a celebration. Emily, now cancer-free and bursting with energy, ran around with a group of other young patients, her laughter ringing out in the warm summer air. Olivia stood with James, watching the scene before them. Zoe and Alex chatted with Maria and Carlos, while her mother, Sarah, demonstrated a dance move to a group of enthralled children. "Penny for your thoughts?" James asked, squeezing her hand. Olivia smiled, leaning into him. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in a year. How one small act, donating blood, set off a chain reaction that changed so many lives." James nodded, his eyes warm as he gazed at her. "You know, there's a theory in chaos mathematics called the butterfly effect. The idea is that a small change in one state can result in large differences in a later state, like a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil causing a tornado in Texas, or a blood donation in Seattle saving a little girl and bringing two people together." Olivia added softly, "Exactly," James agreed. "You never know how one small act of kindness can change the world." As if on cue, Emily bounded over to them, her face flushed with excitement. "Olivia, Dr. James, come play with us." Laughing, Olivia allowed herself to be pulled into the group of playing children, James right behind her. As she joined in the game, surrounded by the people she loved, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Life was unpredictable, often challenging, and sometimes heartbreaking, but it was also beautiful, filled with unexpected connections and moments of pure joy. And Olivia knew, with absolute certainty, that she wouldn't have it any other way. As the sun began to set on their celebration, casting a golden glow over the courtyard, Olivia looked around at the faces of her chosen family. Emily, healthy and vibrant. Maria and Carlos, finding their way back to friendship. Zoe and Alex, supportive and steadfast. Her mother, rediscovering her passion for life. And James, the unexpected love she had found in the midst of crisis. In that moment, Olivia realized that the sketch she had drawn a year ago of their future, together and happy, had become reality. It wasn't perfect, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead, but they would face them together, bound by the ties of love, compassion, and shared experience. As Emily ran up to her for one last hug before heading home, Olivia held her close, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this point. From a simple blood donation to a life-changing connection, their story was a testament to the power of human kindness and resilience. And as she looked towards the future, hand in hand with James and surrounded by her loved ones, Olivia knew that this was just the beginning of their story. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, one day at a time, with open hearts and unwavering hope. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to support us by leaving a like and subscribing to our Slices of Life channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which city are you talking about? It's very rewarding for us to provide our followers with an enjoyable moment. We appreciate the unconditional support you show us in every story. Blessings!